Welcome back, baseball fans, to another edition of the Prep Baseball Report of North Carolina podcast. I'm Brandon Hall, your Mid-Atlantic Regional Scouting Director. He's Matt Payne, our North Carolina Director of Scouting, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about amateur and high school baseball here across North Carolina. Matt, how you doing?
Good.
Long week. We've been trying to catch up on a bunch of reports and getting a lot of info out. I think we had one day last week where we knocked out like 11 reports, which for us is a heavy news day. You start thinking about all the other news things that are populating across PBR. You know, we're posting 11 stories and trying to give those things time to breathe and, populating all the information on those kids. But it's been good. A ton of website hits, a lot of interest on that stuff that's been out there with Border Battle, Team Carolina trials, and a couple scout days that we've run.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going out. It's been a busy month. Good information, recapping the state games from last month. A lot of players featured in there. And getting ready for a big week ahead of us.
Yeah, I think the 17Us are at Lake Point right now playing in our PBR National Championships. So trying to follow that from afar, getting a lot of good reports on players that are playing really well down there. And, some of those guys are guys that we're referencing in some of these reports now. So, college coaches and pro scouts constantly, being able to see a little bit of information now, in the past, possibly for the future. As we wind the summer down, but summer's not over yet. We got our biggest event of the year coming up as we head to Lake Point, me and you, next week, don't we?
Yep. Future Games, biggest event of the year, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, so explain the atmosphere for those that have not seen it or heard about it or been there. Obviously, at Lake Point, we have two four-field complexes that are, a 50-yard walk from one another, from one outfield fence to another outfield fence. It's, 30 feet. But, with the way the future games are run, walk us through that atmosphere and kind of what we expect to see, day one of workouts.
On workout day, they're using several fields and offense going on a field, defense going on another, and they run the 60s. But you walk in and it's slam packed, and you see all the jerseys from all the states there. But the biggest thing that stands out is all the college coaches. And they're lined up everywhere and going from field to field. And I know I'd heard about it before I ever went. And I think the first time I went, you walk in and you think maybe it's a regional deal or something like that. And then all of a sudden you see Sarlos from TCU walking in, guys from Oregon, the West Coast too, and obviously all the East Coast is there. And it's just it's unreal. The seats they got behind home plate, I think, are 3 or 4 rows deep, and most of those are filled with college coaches, along with those guys standing around the main building in between the fields, and then down the lines as well. And it's hard for us to get through there and walk without, stopping and speaking to people that we've seen over the years in the road to get where we're trying to go.
Yeah, it's I actually, my first time going to it was in Indianapolis. We have a facility up there, and it was growing from a Midwest event into a national event at that point. Then we moved to Lake Point, and we had always tried to do the workout on one field. Let's have every coach that's there on one field. And I think our first time at Lake Point, we tried that, and I think we started at 8 a.m. And I want to say you and I walked out of there like 11:30. It was too long. It was too much going on, and the day drug. There's a lot of information for coaches, but as a group, as a company, we sat down and said, hey, we can utilize all 4 fields. And so we transitioned to, hey, we're going to have one group working out on field 1, one we're working out on field 4, and they're going to go through that. So then you had coaches kind of back and forth. Most schools started bringing 2 coaches, and then it transitioned to we need to use all 4 fields. There's going to be 2 offensive fields and 2 defensive fields. And we're just going to tell the coaches it is what it is, and if you want to see everything, bring more guys. And the schools, and our hope was the schools would do this, but we didn't know. We didn't know if the schools were going to go, hey, we can't see anything, we're not coming. What the schools did is, yep, we'll bring 3 guys. And so, 400, 500 college coaches there, pro scouts, day one. It's a little hectic and everything's on one 4-field complex because the other sides are younger guys, which are the 14Us, are going through their junior future games, kind of giving some of the better players in that rising freshman class just a little taste of what the future games is. and they get a chance to be around those high school guys too. But that then leads itself into gameplay. And when we go gameplay, really, we've only got 2 fields active at a time. You may be a little spillover at the end of a game into the beginning of the next, but really there's 2 games going on, and so coaches have a chance to really focus in on areas, on players, and see just about every player that's there and get a read on them if they don't get a great evaluation over the 4 days.
Yeah, it's this year we're doing BP on the field before games, so not only will they get to see guys on workout day take BP, but then come back and take it before a couple of our games down there, and I'm sure college coaches will be on hand for that.
Yeah, and that's we talk about with the guys that come to our events. It's we're trying to get a good snapshot of the player, and for these events that are a little bit longer, the snapshot grows, and what we're able to kind of really see and really deem out of a player grows. And so that day one, 400 college coaches bearing down on BP. We've had some guys whose BPs honestly haven't been very good, but then 2 days later we take BP on the field again, and we go 3 or 4 rounds with them on that day. And now they're relaxed. They've been around it. Now the BP is better. Plus, they had 3 or 4 hits in the gameplay leading into that. Eyes were on them again for that BP display, and guys kind of get that second chance at this event sometimes to kind of sit in there. It's really not an event geared towards offensive efficiency because we're going to hit, I think, 13, maybe 14 in our lineup, and pitchers are going to throw 2, maybe 3 innings. And so very rarely is a hitter going to get a second at bat against the same arm. And so as a hitter, you can talk about just that general toughness and, what hitters need to kind of be prompted for. They're going to see lead arms, and they're only going to get 1 shot at them. So it's almost like an all-star game type setting. And, what's the expectation from a hitter standpoint? What should he be thinking about? And then from an evaluator standpoint, how are you evaluating that guy? Are you evaluating him on just does he get base hits?
Yeah, you're not going to face the same arm twice. You get in there 1 at bat against him, and he's more than likely only going 2 innings, so he's going to air it out. Good chance you're going to get a fastball at some point. Really important to time him up on deck. Hunt a fastball, be on time for fastball, and if you get something else that looks stupid, it's part of it. And evaluators know that. Evaluators know that it favors the pitcher, but they want to see guys get in there and show comfort, confidence, be aggressive. They'd rather see you, expand the zone maybe a little bit, but get to see you swing the bat than take a heater over the heart of the plate, and then you got to worry about 2 tough sliders to hit from the guy. So they're looking at a lot more than results, and obviously they want to see bat speed and athleticism, but a lot of it is can you get your feet in the ground and show comfort against the high level arms that we'll see down there.
And that brings us to the guys that we're taking. We're going to kind of release some preview information, possibly starting Wednesday night. This obviously will air eventually on Thursday, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the Monday and Tuesday of next week as we get ready for the workout day for the Future Games in Team Carolina. It's a 20. We're going to have a 24-man roster. Players from North Carolina, South Carolina, representing Team Carolina. Players are going to get geared out a little bit. Mizuno's taking care of 2 different jerseys, some pants, socks, belt, hat. Our MVP of each game is going to get a Dick's Sporting Goods gift card. The top defensive catcher throughout the event is going to get some Diamond Cruise sunglasses. What were some of the, there was a couple other in there. We have some other giveaways. A workout day is being sponsored by Webflex. We've got some other things that players are going to be, it's an ever evolving world. And so players understanding kind of what some of these advertisers are could lead to NIL deals on down the line. Because I think a lot of these companies now understand the NIL isn't necessarily a situation for we just go pay a player and then he goes to a school. You're actually seeing companies actively recruit players who have social media presence, who have personality, who can kind of be directed. Hey, if you're wearing this, other people will follow you. If you're doing these things, other people will follow you. And so this can be a start for some of these guys as they're still 2 years away from college of kind of building that brand and being on the field. So and we're going to talk to our guys about that and how to handle all that stuff. But let's jump into the roster a little bit. And Matt, let's start with some of the pitchers. Team Carolina is taking down there that are from North Carolina. I know Gabe Murray, Jake Kakovic, Austin Fetterspiel, Davis Cabbage, Micah Simpson, and William Leahy. Each one of those guys attended an event this year, and we got a chance to see them live in action, put our hands on them a little bit. Walk us through. Let's start with Gabe Murray, right-handed pitcher out of the Fuqua area, and what you saw out of him at the Team Carolina Trials, Charlotte.
High spin guy, not a big frame, but so it creates a little different release point angle right there. The arm speed and the spin jump for me at that event.
Yeah, the other thing he did is he ran a 6.6. So there's obviously some big time twitch in there. Our next two, Jake Kakovic, Austin Fetterspiel, two guys that were preseason All-State events, and two big bodies. And one of the things that we're doing at this event is we are trying to project guys out. How many guys can we get to this event that have a chance to play in the big leagues? And you saw during the draft last week how many different videos were being put out of this guy was at Future Games. Now look at him being drafted in the third round. These two guys have those frames where you go, it's easy to dream about what they could be in 2 years, 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, Kakovic, really good basketball player, athletic, throws strikes. The velocity is going to jump at some point. Really interested to see what he is down in Georgia. But, the athleticism, dual sport guy, a lot to dream on with him. And, Fetterspiel's a bigger body kid that showed well at some events and got some arm strength in there.
I mean, he closed for East Forsyth for most of the year and was in some tight situations, and they played a bunch of close games, and they basically got everybody's best shot because at one point in the year we had them nationally ranked and sitting at number one in our Power 25 poll before they ran into some injury issues and kind of declined a little bit towards the end of the year. So I'm interested to see, like you said, how has that body progressed since last time we've seen him? We've gotten good reports over the summer. The other three guys from North Carolina, we'll start with Micah Simpson, but Micah Simpson, William Leahy, and Davis Cabbage, three pitchability guys with two lefties, Simpson and Leahy. I know you're a big fan of Micah Simpson. What are we looking for out of Micah as a member of Team Carolina?
Can really pitch. A little bit different angle, release point left-hander. He threw at the border battle and just cut guys up. So interested to see how that plays against the hitters we'll see down there. And you mentioned Davis Cabbage, a favorite in the 2025 class, just athletic and really spin a breaking ball.
And then William Leahy, the left-handers in the Dirtbags organization, was at one of their scout days this year. And with all three of those guys, it's high strike percentages, it's attack of hitters, it's the ability to attack in some different ways. There's not necessarily a pitch you turn to those three guys and go, here's the pitch. If you get in trouble, just throw this and we'll get out of the inning. They all have to live ahead in the count. They all have to be able to pitch to zones. I think Micah has the ability to pitch up in the zone a little bit because his fastball does have some ride. But they're 2 and 3 pitch combination guys that if they can settle in pretty quickly, we've had some of those guys have really big success at events like this because they just flood the zone and keep the hitters on their heels.
Yeah, and I think all three of those guys have more in the tank. A little bit different in the developmental process body-wise, and they definitely have some growing to do.
Let's move on to our infielders, and I think we've got an interesting group of kind of a mix of infielders too. We're taking 5 from the state of North Carolina, and we've got really 3 that could profile as middle infielders. Matt McKnight kind of positions himself right now as a third baseman, but may flip back over in the middle at some point. But let's start with Wilmer Martinez and Xavier McQuarrie. McQuarrie we saw at a preseason All-State event. Martinez as well at a preseason All-State event. And then we're able to track them through the high school year and kind of get a really good feel for what they were like, not only in workouts, but in gameplay.
Yeah, Wilmer, defensive ability stands out with him. Then, right-handed hitter with some barrel feel. Started switch hitting not too long ago. Did it at the All-State event. Got reports he's done it this summer. It's progressing pretty well. I hope he does it against some live arms down at the Future Games. Also, personality. Just seems like it would be a great guy to play with. Always smiling, got some energy. And McCory, left-handed hitter. The swing stood out at the All-State, and just ability to put barrel on the ball. And got reports of him playing very well defensively this summer as well.
And he's an interesting guy because he was playing behind some guys in high school, and he's a baseball player. And so he just flipped out in the outfield and won a spot out there at Providence. Different ways of getting in the lineup, and not saying that he didn't stick in the middle of the infield moving forward, but you don't ever know what the school you show up at. They may have an All-American playing shortstop already. And so these guys, I think as baseball players, have that ability to adjust, adapt, and maybe figure out different ways to get in the lineup. Matt McKnight, another guy that's similar in that fashion, has been willing to move out of the middle infield. Has been playing a little bit more corner infield, but it's a different type of frame. Talk a little bit about Matt.
I think he's highly skilled. Uh, what he does is very relaxed and controlled. Um, Good swing path, skilled defensively, and his frame's so long. You don't know when he's going to get that man strength, but when it comes, I think you're going to have a really dangerous player.
The other two guys on the corner, maybe two of the top hitters at this event, guys that have really stood out to us over the last couple of years. Connor Robertson was a guy that we really had on our board last year to possibly take to the future games, and we ended up taking a couple 24s over him, being a 25, knowing, hey, if he doesn't commit, he's got another year. And then lo and behold, they changed the rules. He's still available, and we're going to take him. And then also Caden Davidson, and Caden's got history and bloodlines in the family, with high expectations from the high school program he's coming from, and has really handled it all and continued to excel.
Yeah, played a big role there at TC Roberson this year, and brother was a first round draft pick with Atlanta, and just really hits. He's a well known guy on the circuit. He'll have eyes on him down there, and look forward to having him with us. And you talked about Connor. It feels like every time he shows up at something, or we see him during the high school season, he's driving something to the right center gap, and strong hands, can hit, and I think he's continued to progress defensively as well.
As part of Team Carolina, North Carolina is supplying two of our four outfielders. Little different types of bodies, little different types of game in terms of what those two guys are going to supply Team Carolina with for the week. Let's start with Ian Williams from Wake Forest High School.
Can go get it in center. Played a big role. Wake Forest, another highly ranked high school team for us this year. I think he knows who he is at the plate. Line drive guy, going to spray it around, and he runs good, uses speed on the base pass. But I think he kind of gives us a true center fielder going down there, and the other guys.
He was a guy that at border battle stood out, and he ran a good 60. So I don't want to downplay his 60 because the 60 was good, but he plays a lot faster than a 60 time. And he's a guy that may not hit his top end run speed until he's 22, 23, 24, and really matures into his frame because of the twitch that he has. So, you may put, a 60 run grade on him now with a 70 future, and we may look up in a couple of years ago, it's a 70 run, maybe it's a 75 run future, because he plays at that faster pace when he's in the outfield, when he's going first to third, than he does just in a true straight line 60. And his 10 and 30 yard splits are really good. The other outfielder for us is a left-handed hitter out of Pro 5 Academy, Zach Bender.
Yeah, Team Carolina trials at Campbell. Hit a couple balls out. Can really backspin the ball and drive it to his pull side. I think the swing is going to play moving forward, and he's got some arm strength from the outfield as well.
Yeah, that was our last event trying to ID guys for this team, and you had pushed a little bit to make sure we had some slots open because we had Caden Morris jump out of nowhere last year and make this club, and I think that was a good move with making sure we had some slots open as we got to that July 6th date. Saw Zach, obviously he fits. He's a guy that college coaches need to see. Our final position player is a catcher. Can also pitch, not scheduled to pitch for us down there, but has arm strength and a bigger frame for some of the catchers of what we've taken down there in the past. Aiden Wall out of Ledford High School.
Yeah, long athletic frame. he's got room to grow into his body as well. But arm strength and bat speed,
Yep.
he's got those tools, and um, I think he's flashed consistency with them at times. And anytime you're that long, it takes more time to sync some of that up, and I think it's going to really click for him at some point. And I hope it does next week in Georgia.
Yeah, I'm excited about this group going down there. We're going to play California on day one after our workout day, day one. Then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're going to play California, Team Mid Atlantic, which is Virginia and Maryland, and then Team Florida. Um, we've seen Mid Atlantic and Florida in the past because we've been pulled with them. First shot at seeing California. I've gone through their roster a little bit in the past, and they've always kind of brought some scrappy little guys that can play multiple positions. But I think Les has gotten a better feel for getting players early so that they can get their flights booked and get out to Lake Point. And he's bringing a physical bunch. And then we know what we're going to see with Virginia and Maryland. We know Florida is going to have players, even as many commitments as they have, and guys are off the board. They're still going to bring really polished, competitive players. So I'm looking forward to the bracket. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys kind of teed up and compete a little bit and see who lights up a little bit when we've been punched in the mouth.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see good arms. I think our hitters will be up for that challenge and seeing how we compete. And we typically pitch it very well down there, and look forward to seeing the staff we've assembled. And always a fun week. A lot of talent, a lot going on, and it's fun to see those guys, come together and get to know each other a little bit and have fun for a few days.
I know we've talked about this in the past, but it's going to be hot. Guys are going to have to, really take care of their bodies, eat, sleep. And we're fortunate enough that with our podcast here, we've gotten involved with a company with Liquid IV that it has a chance to help guys in these types of atmospheres. Being able to recover, being able to play a second, a third, or fourth day in a row. For me myself, I've gotten a chance to know the company a little bit. I've tried the product. It's convenient packaging. It's easy to use. You just dump it into for me, I use bottles of water, a little bit of a shake, and then bang. And it's got the hydration power is a lot more than what it is with just water. So, it's 12 delicious, refreshing flavors to keep your hydration routine exciting. Contains 5 essential vitamins: B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C, and 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. Premium ingredients, no GMO, free of gluten, dairy, and soy. So if hydration is an issue, you have interest in looking up Liquid IV, we would encourage you to do that. And you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the promotion code PBRNC23 at checkout. Again, that's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code at liquidiv.com. And that promo code is PBRNC23. And it happens every year, Matt. We'll have some guys that will struggle with the heat a little bit. So, hopefully, we're actually going to have a conference call with them later today. And it's one of the things we're going to talk about is, go ahead and start hydrating now. And I think it's a good tool for everybody that's playing out in these summers. Or I know we got a bunch of football players and dual guys are starting to get ready to go into their summer workouts and their fall workouts. So allowing that body to stay hydrated allows that body to compete at higher levels day 3, day 4, day 5.
Yeah, and you can really see it with some of those guys from the upper Midwest and upper West Coast that come down and haven't been in the heat or don't play in it very often, and it kind of hits you a little bit if it's your first time down there.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see how the California kids react because we're getting them on day 2. So day 1, there's a little bit of excitement. There's some stress with day 1 just because you feel like you have to prepare and play so well in a short little quick look. And you're at the field for 2 to 2.5 hours, but you're really only getting a couple swings, running a 60, and then taking some ground balls, and you're really out of there. But there's a lot of expended energy on that day. We turn around and play them the next day, and I think we got them in the midday. And so we'll see if they are coming from that that low key. It's a dry heat out there. That's Arizona. I don't know. I've been to California. I don't think they get the humidity we get though.
No humidity. They may need to be more worried about staff. Those kids come in and there for a couple hours, and we got the junior guys too, so it's all day for us. So we
There-
feel it a little bit more.
there's no doubt that our staff will be hurting on day 2 and day 3 because we're gonna swing the fungo and throw more BP than we do. We do an event once a week or twice a week. Now we got 4 days in a row. There's no doubt that we'll be limping out of there. So hey, let's move forward. I know last week we had a chance to really dive in and break down the 2023 MLB draft. 43 players that were connected to North Carolina currently, meaning they were in high school or college in North Carolina at the time of the draft. 43 of those guys selected. Most of them are eventually signing, just tracking what's happening with signings. Really good job by our area scouts, IDing, and then figuring out who will sign, who won't sign, things of that sort, and so that they're maximizing their draft picks. Any thoughts as you had a week to kind of look back at the 23s and you're starting to see some of these signings come off before we start talking about the 24s and what could happen next year?
I think you're seeing a lot more, not so much about the rounds guys go in. There's a lot of guys getting, you know, top 3 round money
Yeah.
going later with how some of the teams are managing it. And then I think there's some colleges in the area that got to be pretty happy with, uh, what they're getting on campus that, heavily scouted guys. And, at times you probably thought they were going to sign and they're going to show up and play college baseball for 3 years and help a lot of programs in our area.
And I don't know about you, but with me, I'm still in that mode of 40 rounds. The numbers in my head don't work yet with 20 rounds. And so when we put a grade on a guy that says, hey, he's a 5th, 8th rounder, and you're looking at going, okay, as long as he doesn't do something just obscene with his number, he's going to be signed. He's going to have that chance. But, honestly, they're probably drafting in round 20 a bunch of guys that have 8 to 10 round numbers on them in terms of their grade. It's just you're trying to put grades on guys, and you see, as guys are going through that first round, I thought MLB TV did a great job in terms of talking about how this guy projects. And really, you get in the second round, and now we're talking about he projects as a backup catcher. He's a big league backup. And, but that's his number. That's his grade. And so now trying to project out where do these guys sit in the 5th to 8th round. And as we get into the 20th round, are drafting guys with 8th to 10th round numbers on them. But what does that really mean about that player? That 8th to 10th round grade is really he's a program. He's an org guy. He's a guy that's there to make the organization run so that their top prospects are getting reps. And if a couple of those guys develop and get to the big leagues, it's a great story. But I think with what scouts are figuring that out is they're taking less risk. And the college guy is a less risky guy because I've got more history with him. So I'm willing to take more of those guys with that 8th to 10th round grade than I am the high school guy. I think the college guy probably eventually, especially with seniors, is a lot cheaper than the high school guy as well.
Yeah, definitely a lot cheaper. And college guys are, you can stick them in A ball, and like you said, they can fill the roster to play with the prospects. And high school guys you're probably going to spend at least a year in Florida, Arizona in the complex league, and it takes them a little longer to adapt, not only to the game but also the professional lifestyle where college guys, you can slide them in A ball and they'll hold their own just fine for the most part.
I thought one of the neat things I heard, one of the draft stories I heard, was talking about Zach Nato, who's a Florida player who went to Campbell for 3 years, was a first rounder out of Campbell by the Angels, and he's a little undersized, but he put up numbers at Campbell. He put up numbers in the Cape. He put up numbers every summer. He showed an ability to play shortstop at a high level, and he was a little awkward with his swing. If you're really watching him, though, he got all this movement got out of the way early. And, when he really get down to basics, when he got to his launch position, he looked like a lot of really good hitters. He just had a lot of things in the way to get there. And in drafting him, the Angels put him in a situation with a bunch of ground ball pitchers. And I don't know that was a thought process of the Angels or it just happened to line up. But, in his first couple months in the minors, he was getting a ton of plays. And so night after night after night, the Angels are seeing he can play shortstop. he can play shortstop at a higher level. He can play shortstop at a higher level. He can play shortstop at a higher level. And so they were able to advance him really quickly. Still a little worried. Is the swing ever going to get to the point where he's not getting that stuff out of the way and big leaguers start to take advantage of him? But the biggest thing was defensively, they knew he was their best shortstop. He gave them the best chance to win with Ohtani and with Trout in the lineup. That was our best chance to play shortstop and see if we can't get this thing rolling. And having him in a situation in the minors where they had so many ground ball guys, they got him reps, and the organization got a great feel for what he really truly graded out wise as at shortstop at the big league level.
Yeah, that's an incredible story with him. And like you said, a lot of people would have wrote him off with the movement or the swing, or doubted it. And all he did was hit. He'd go to summer ball and hit in college, and he's done outstanding. And to make it as fast as he has is very impressive.
Let's move to the 2024s. And at this time of year, I think you updated our 2024 rankings, and our staff looked through them early May, mid-May, which seems like light years ago with the number of players that we've seen. Let's start here. Do we have a Walker Jenkins? Do we have a 1-1 type guy? Do we have a true, definite, definitive first rounder on the high school board right now today in the 24 class?
I do not think North Carolina has that in the 2024 class.
I would agree
players,
with you.
but I don't know that we have a high school first rounder.
So we get to that next tier. That next tier is those guys that are probable draft picks if the number's right. In that high school sense, if we're not, because really in the second round you still have guys going that have first round numbers on them at times. But if the class is not as top heavy in North Carolina as we've seen it at times, and we look at that next tier of guy, who are those guys that we could be looking, third to seventh round, depending on what their number is and will they sign or do they want to go to school? There's a lot of other factors that kind of factor into will they fit in the third to seventh round, but are there guys on the board that you kind of jump up and go, I think teams are going to have to really take a hard look at this guy, East Coast Pro coming up, into some events in the fall, and then definitely as we get to the spring.
Yeah, you got Anderson Nance. I think he was number 1 in the class with the first rankings, and
Yep.
he's still there.
Yep.
Continues to perform. Velocity keeps ticking up a little bit. Truett Manuel at West Henderson, we know what he did for them, leading into a state title. He's a big, strong kid, 3-sport guy. He'll be a guy that those scouts are seeing often next spring. And then Perry Hargett was at our pro case this year. Strong and athletic, got some tools, and interesting to see how his fall and winter, comes together heading into next year.
And I think you're dead on with those are the kind of the three guys that have separated themselves a little bit. Not to say that somebody else can't have a good month here and jump up into that tier, but when we're looking at all three of those guys, we're looking at Anderson Nance going, okay, is the fastball going to carry him far enough? Is the breaking ball going to be graded out high enough? We're looking at Truett Manuel, and quite honestly, is there going to be enough reps that these guys have seen to really be able to put an ideal number on him without saying it's a really risky pick, because he's a multi-sport guy, and that's a great thing. We don't want to take that away from him, because it leaves that athleticism on the board, it leaves that room to the ceiling. But when guys can't tell you what the ceiling is, there's a high risk to that player. And then with Perry, and I think we run into this with most high school players. I know this was said on a podcast and then written about in a different publication, by very reputable guys about Walker Jenkins, was he didn't face really good pitching. And I think people in the Wilmington area took that as like a shot at them. And it wasn't. He didn't. He faced well above average high school pitching, but he didn't see guys throwing 94 to 97 with hammers. And so how is he going to react to that? So when you're comparing Walker Jenkins at bats, and then maybe Cam Fisher, who was a first baseman at Charlotte, who's third in the country in home runs, they're facing two completely different types of quality of arms. And so scouts are having to do different jobs with those guys. With Perry, it's going to be the same deal. Perry's going to see some good arms in that league Metrolina Christian plays in. They're going to play, Charlotte Christian's got two really good young arms. They may play Huff. They may play some of these other teams in the area. But, just because he sees a guy throwing 90 doesn't mean, a 90 arm right now, let's be honest, that's a 40 grade. So it's a below average fastball. And so, and is anybody in high school in North Carolina next year, gonna have a 50 breaking ball? Nance, maybe. Purvis, probably. Boy, it gets thin after that. Try and put a 50 on something. Not to say that it's not going to happen, but there's still a lot of growth with these guys. So trying to evaluate hitters can be difficult because they're not seeing average arms. They're seeing below average arms.
Yeah, that makes it really tough and leads to a lot of projection, a lot more guessing, and then with these high school guys, you got to have a pretty good feel for where they're going to profile at defensively too. And if you're going to go as a high school kid, there better be a good chance you can stay in the middle of the field, and unless
Right.
you're projecting 60 or 60 plus power down the road.
And I think with Perry, you can project him at short, but I think there will be questions because he may not play short all the time. At Metrolina, he may flip over and play third because they've got the infielders going to East Carolina.
Neil Griffith.
They got Griffin, and then they've got it's just a good club. They've got 4, 5, 6 guys are going to play college baseball. So saying, Perry, you have to be our short, they may be able to give him some time off. He may be able to flip over and play second, and they can use him to close on the back end. He's not going to be a pro prospect on the mound, but if they want to save the arm a little bit, they may play him at second. And then pro guys are going to come in here and going, why do you play him short? Well, there's all sorts of reasons, and they'll figure that out because the guys in this area really work their tails off. After we get past Hargett, I do think there's one more tier of guys that have a legitimate shot at kind of moving themselves up. When you look at, Cade Morris, and that big frame, and who wants to project what 6'8" or 6'9" happens to become. Collins Black, we've seen 93 already out of him in a bullpen. Cameron Seagraves, we've seen 90, 92. We've seen some pitchability. Purvis may have one of the better breaking balls in the country. Drew Downs, maybe one of the best pure hitters in the country, and he's missed some sections. So, we revert back to Xavier Isaac. Does him missing some time actually help him? Because now guys have to really come in and do their bear down, this fall and this spring coming up on him. Nesta's going to Oklahoma to play football and baseball. I think Hightower is probably a really solid college guy. So when we get to about 10 and down, we're looking at guys that really project to be college guys out of this group, at least for a couple of years. You see anybody different on that list as you're going through it?
I think Ty Goodson's popped up this summer.
Yep.
There'll be guys in to see him. You mentioned Griffith at Metrolina Christian. I think he's a guy people will lay eyes on.
Ryan Schwartz has made a jump with the reclass.
He has. Crawford's got the tools.
Yep.
Does he put it together? McDuffie's your guy. You've loved him since day one. He's interesting for me because the frame's not developed yet, and he can really pitch. So, what does 6 months of the offseason do?
And I think that's where the pro scouts in our area make their money. Is anybody that watches a lot of baseball, anybody that's a dad or a mom in the 24 class that's traveling all summer and sees these guys can probably separate it in a bucket. Here's about 7 guys that everybody knows pro scouts are going to be on. We can go down to about number 50. With what John McKillop's at 44. There's going to be pro interest on him because of his state games. Jason Parsons Jr., he can really throw when he's healthy. And, prayers and shout out to Jason. I know he's going through a lot right now, but hoping for, all that to really go through a really quick recovery with what he's dealing with. But, if he's healthy, he's a guy that pro guys need to go see him throw just so they can say I've seen him because you don't know. Yeah, that's what makes our area, I think, really dynamic. Is you look up and let's look at the 23 draft. We had guys that were at 90 in our on our list as high school players. And I struggle. I went back to the list, and you start looking at what our numbers were and what our projections were, and it would be hard to move them up off of 90. But they end up being an eighth rounder out of college because one of them had a position change. He went from a secondary pitcher to a primary pitcher. He put on 45 pounds, and he's throwing a disappearing fastball at 95, 96 at Wingate. That can happen. That doesn't mean our ranking was wrong in 23, but it also opens up that can of if a scout sees it before everybody else sees it, his rankings can be different than ours. I love McDuffie. We can argue, if McDuffie should be higher than 25 in our rankings, and if you and I are sitting down, it's just me and you, I'm going to have him higher. But when it's our entire staff talking and putting these things in order, and you have a bunch of different collective minds, and we're putting a grade on guys, and we're backing that grade up, that's where he falls. He falls at 25 going into the summer. Now, I think he's done enough. He's going to move up at the end of the summer from what my projections were, and you start seeing him trending that way. But I think there's guys on this list that we haven't talked about, that we don't have a huge background on, and I think it's going to be interesting to see who makes that jump. Who's the guy on this list that puts 70 pounds of muscle on in the next 5 years? And all of a sudden, it's a really high ball to bat ability that now it's true power plus ball to bat ability. Another one that comes to mind, who is the shortstop? Connor Norby. You were all over that one in high school, and he didn't run. He didn't hit home runs. Is he really a shortstop? Well, he just goes to Carolina and he just barrels every time he swings the bat. He's on the barrel, and he continues to get stronger. He's going to play in the big leagues. He's probably going to stick in the big leagues for a bunch of time with the Orioles because he can freaking hit. And I think there's guys that are going to be on this list in the 24 class that are that way too.
Yeah, and I think, you go through our lists, and there's got to be, especially early on, a blend of the impact college guy early versus the guy who has the pro tools but isn't as polished yet. So you kind of balance that out, a little bit, and every year you end up with a guy that's 40 to 50 who, has got some tools, and all of a sudden he starts getting a little more polished, and pro guys are in to see him, and he's jumping up boards all over the place.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How important is it? And you've done it at the junior college level, you've done it at the 4-year level, but getting those guys, you've had guys that you've been around that are really good players that, and you don't have to name these guys, but quite honestly, you didn't like being around. You didn't mesh. It was hard to talk to them, and they were good players, but they didn't take that jump. Versus the guy that really meshes with you, but also challenges you. Doesn't just take you at your word, but forces you to teach. And then when you really dial in on something and it works, boy, the belief in him goes just through the roof, and then the tool takes off and evolves. That meshing point, that camaraderie, that finding the fit. How important is that for that guy that's in that 50 to 90 range to find that fit at college, whether it's pitching coach, hitting coach, head coach, so that they continue to develop to make that next jump?
It's got to be one of the most important things in your decision making process. I mean, we've seen it enough that the kid with the loud tools goes to maybe a bigger program or the wrong program, and he needs to be developed. Doesn't mesh with the staff. Struggles making the necessary adjustments, or the staff doesn't have the patience for him to make the necessary adjustments, and he's out after a year. Versus if you kind of get that right out of high school, your developmental process just speeds up because you got a coaching staff with some patience and guys you're comfortable with, and you go through the trial and error of development, and some guys really take off and make a lot of money that way.
And for me as a young coach, way back when, with Coach Scaff, and I played for Mark Scaff at Wilmington. I knew what I was getting into coaching with him, but in the recruiting process, we could not go get a bunch of guys that didn't care about academics. And typically baseball guys are higher academic guys, but you find some really, really bright people that are lazy about their academics, and they just make 3 O's because they're so smart. That guy under Coach Scaff would have had his thumb on that guy from day one and would have rode his tail to the point where the guy just wanted out. That guy didn't get better for us at Wilmington early on. What we had to go find guys that were going to be able to kind of handle. He was so high on the academic side and so high on doing everything right academically. And at the time, he had just finished teaching at Wilmington before he got him to be a full-time head coach. He was still teaching at the university. So he took that very seriously. And if we brought guys in that didn't fit, those guys wouldn't develop. And so as a staff, we talked about that in the recruiting process. We talked about, at Charlotte, we talked about, my demeanor. I'm a little bit more of a type A personality. I have everything written out. You deal with it on a daily basis with me. You probably get tired of emails and schedules and calendars, but that's who I am. And if you can't deal with me as if you're an 18 or 19-year-old, you're not going to make it with me till you're 20 or 21. So we had to recruit to that a little bit. We would take some chances on some guys here and there. You could have some outliers, but it would have killed me or killed them if I had 14 of those guys. One of us wouldn't have made, or one group wouldn't have made it. And I'm pretty sure those ages, I would have been the one that made it. So we're excited about future games. We're excited about really diving into this 24 class. I know, Matt, you've got rankings coming up in about a month. You're going to start turning some stuff into Shooter and starting to really dive into this stuff heavy. And then you and I and the rest of our staff will sit down and start really mincing through the 24s and 25s, getting a little bit further to know on the 26s, and then, starting to pop some 27 names out, which is scary. So, as we look forward to that, next week we are going to try to podcast, if our schedule allows, probably from Lake Point or from wherever it is we're staying. Any last comments or thoughts before we head down there to Atlanta?
Excited about going. Hope we don't have too many lightning delays and stay somewhat on schedule. But the kids make it enjoyable, and look forward to being on the field and around those guys.
All right. For Matt Payne, I'm Brandon Hall. This is the Prep Baseball Report of North Carolina podcast, and we'll see you at the field.